All right. Hello, everyone. Hopping in here a couple minutes early just to make sure that we are all set up. We are good to go. I'm going to type in the chat bar to make sure that you can see me and that you can hear me. It is a absolutely gorgeous morning here. I am north of Toronto for those of you that are coming in from different parts of the world. So Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Now, this is a masterclass that I am hosting initially for those of you that are part of the current Simplicity project, the one that is live happening at Nature's Emporium in Newmarket, the one that is online, as well as women in the hormone project. So what that means is that right now there are over 200 of you women that are participating in this specific masterclass. This is part one of two. So today's focus is the Cycle and Fertility Awareness Project. It is helping you to go deeper in your understanding of your menstrual cycle, even if you no longer have a cycle. What was happening in those years building up to your body when you did have your menstrual cycle? Possibly what were some of the different things happening and going on at the various phases of your cycle? And, you know, we are in this period of time where we've always been here, that women believe that when they stop having their menstrual cycle or when they are through those fertility years and they no longer want to have children, and maybe they didn't want to have children at any point in their life, that their fertility does not matter, and it's simply not true. And so my hope in creating this class for you today is to actually open up that dialogue, to change the conversation and the information a little bit so that you as a woman can understand for your own body, for your daughters, for your sisters, for your girlfriends, you know, women around you, that our fertility is one of our superpowers, that our fertility is our fifth vital sign, which we'll get deeper into what that actually means, and that this is an area of attention that we need to make sure that we are giving and paying attention to for our entire life as a woman. And so before we actually get going into the meat of the talk today, if one of you can just, and I don't need all of you, just one of you can let me know that you can see me and you hear me clearly, that would be fantastic. Now, for those of you that are on here and possibly can't stay on for the full 90 minutes, because we are going to use every moment that we have today as we go through this, I am recording the entire session. I am going to post this session in a couple of different ways. So it will be posted into our private groups for the Simplicity Project, both versions, as well as the Hormone Project in your Facebook group. I am also converting this into a podcast. So for those of you that are listening via the podcast, welcome to all of you. Now, you can't see me. You can't, I'm not sharing a slideshow. That's not how I roll. I am very conversation based. So this actually serves beautifully as a podcast. What I would ask is that if you are tuning in whatever way that you are, that you turn your notifications off, that you make sure that your phone is turned off and that you are really fully paying attention. And so if you're listening to this while you're driving, or while you're working out, whatever it may be, it's still going to get in there. And there's a lot that we're going over today. I do not expect you, nor should you expect yourself, to be able to retain every single bit of information that we are going to go through. That is why it is recorded. So you have a couple different ways you could move through this morning. You can sit back and simply listen. You could listen and take some notes. What we have decided to do as a team is actually, through this masterclass, flip this into making it more of a hands-on. So you're going to have this as the recorded video. We're going to create some working sheets for you, some masterclass worksheets, kind of some like Q&As that we can test your knowledge. You can understand what it is that you're absorbing. And then your next calls to action. So if you've been following me for any period of time, you know that my focus is education. It's not talking at you. It is communicating with you. And so my hopes in creating this for you, it's to help you continue to build your relationship and that internal awareness with your body. And that we need to be caring about our hormonal health, both internally, but also externally in our environment around us, long after our childbearing years. Once you can start to understand your actual menstrual cycle, the purpose of it, because yes, on one level, our menstrual cycle comes into our bodies, and is produced by our bodies as part of our fertility, right? Being able to carry a child and continue life onward. But that's not its only purpose. There are so many, like literally a symphony of hormones that are involved in the starting of your menstrual cycle, going through puberty, the maintenance of your menstrual cycle, the success, the symptoms, like all of these different signs are really trying to steer our attention towards how well are we doing overall. You know, your hormones, these are chemicals. They are chemical messengers that are literally talking to us, not just on a daily basis, like moment to moment, based on your energy, your sleep, your skin, your hair, your body weight, your sex drive, your mood. I mean, all of these different things are coming back to our hormones. And so, you know, as a hormone practitioner, every day, every single day, I'm either getting an email or an Instagram DM or Facebook that's saying, so how do I balance my hormones? It's like the most general question of life with many different limbs. And look, what hormones are we talking about? So when I was putting together these masterclass series, for me, I thought, okay, where are the gaps? What is it that when I'm teaching the Simplicity Project or the Hormone Project, I'm working with women one-on-one, when they end up in my practice, what are their main struggles? Their main struggles are period problems, thyroid issues, adrenal issues, weight gain, acne, hair loss, anxiety, depression, lack of sex drive. Okay, why? Why have we gotten to this point where all of these things are showing up and happening in our bodies? And it is because there is a massive lack of education. One of the first things that I talk to women about when I have a consultation with them is, you know, how old were you when your menstrual cycle came on? Can you explain to me your health as a child? What was your understanding of what was happening in your body? How was your period when it first started? Did you get a period naturally? Did you get put on the pill to bring a period on? What was actually going on? And so this opens up the gateway for truly starting to create the roadmap and understand your own biological blueprint of what was happening that has led to now what is happening in your body. And for me as a practitioner, my job, I see it as this way, is not simply to understand where you're at now and then move you forward. It's to understand that where you are now is a result of what has happened previously. And so we need to understand and unpack, what does previous health mean for your body historically that has now got to this point today? And then what are your goals, and all of those other parts we begin to layer on as we create a protocol. The problem is for most people is we start with the right now. We start with the discomfort, the signs, the symptoms, those types of things. And then we want to create this platform or this protocol moving forward. And we get frustrated because all of our efforts oftentimes feel like for nothing, right? They feel like they're not working. It feels like, you know, you are quote unquote on the surface doing everything right. And yet you don't understand why you don't feel right, why you don't feel good, why you are being dismissed by the practitioners that you are working with, and so on and so forth. And so, you know, for this, I understand it is so frustrating, but part of where you should be frustrated is that you haven't been taught this. You have not been educated along the path. So once you can understand the power of your cycle, once you can understand the cycle phases and your needs based on them, you can start to create an individualized plan. And oftentimes you'll need assistance with a practitioner or a program or some type of guidance in the beginning, because again, this is new information. And just like in any other facet of your life, if you were learning a new subject, you're going to sign up for a course. You're going to go back to school. You're going to pay to work with somebody who's going to coach and mentor you. We can do self-taught information, but it really does hit a threshold because we're too close to the situation and you have your own bias as to maybe what's going on in your body. And your own education will carry you to a certain point, and then that's when you're going to need the assistance from somebody else. And so when you get to this place where we can start to create this individualized plan, and this is based on your nutrition, your exercise, your supplements, your energy, your creative abilities, your work, and so much more. If you've been following me for, years, but especially in the last couple of years, I have talked a lot about this, breakup, this relationship with the word hustle, how I used to flow through my life. And it didn't matter where I was at in my cycle, where I was at energetically, my whole thing was get up and work harder today, create more. It was do, be on, And I'm not saying I never get into a state of hustle. There are times and phases and seasons of that, but you can't move into hustle and park your butt there forever and a day. You are going to burn out. Okay. And what's really been fascinating for me over these last couple of years, I mean, I've been tracking my cycle since I was 22 when I came off the pill. And we'll go a bit deeper into that and how this can be something for you to use as a tool. But in the last few years, really paying attention to where am I at in my cycle? What type of projects and events and things am I going to have going on at that time? How am I going to move my body has really allowed me the opportunity to literally keep data and track all of this. And I'm actually creating an entire program that's being filmed in July, released end of August. That will be a 28-day. So it'll be based off the 4 phases of a 28-day menstrual cycle. And if you don't have a 28-day cycle, please do not worry. We're going to talk about that today, and it'll be built into the program. But this will include movement, your energetic and nourishment, as you know, that you're putting into your system every day as well too. And it'll be solely based on the female internal cycle and the lunar cycles and rhythms that are happening in the environment around us. I don't have a name for it yet. Still percolating on that one. I'm sure it'll come to me on the mat when I'm actually creating and filming it. But the thing is we have grown up with women where our energy has been solely focused around our bleed time without understanding that the other phases leading into and coming out of our actual menstrual phase are truly what is setting our bodies up for hormonal health and happiness. You know, the areas that women are typically most comfortable with in terms of their knowledge and what they recognize every month is they're like, I have 2 phases. I have PMS phase where I'm bitchy, tired, have cravings, weight gain, water retention, cramps, all of those things. And I have my period. Those are the 2 phases that I'm comfortable and I understand and know. And PMS is not actually a phase. And so we're going to break this down today. You know, like I was saying, I've been tracking my own cycle since I was 22 years old. Now, back then, because I am 39, so that was many a years ago, this was after being on the birth control pill for 7 years. I can remember it like it was yesterday, being in one of my courses to become a holistic nutritionist, and the instructor, Lorraine Soro, who some of you may know, that day was teaching about estrogen dominance and the impact the pill had on our gut, on our overall health, our vitality. And I remember sitting there in class and just feeling so outraged that I had never been taught this, that my doctor never taught me this, that, you know, OBGs weren't talking about this, that how are there so many different risks and side effects and symptoms associated, and they're handing it out like candy to young girls and women. And that was my experience. And so in coming off of this, there was no period tracker apps on iPhones and smartphones. I literally had graph paper and I would do my temperature every day and I would like chart it to see where my rhythms were. And this was something that at 17 I had learned. It was when I read my first book on fertility, and not because I was trying to get pregnant at 17, but I had always had this innate wonderment about our cycles and about our female bodies. And I was always very connected to changes that were happening in my system. I also grew up with my oldest sister who was 12 years older than me. And so like when I was 4, she was 16. So I was witness to so many different things that were happening with the women in my life and around me, that when I picked up this book by Tony Weichler called Taking Charge of Your Fertility, when I was 17 years old at a yoga studio that I was going into, and I started to flip through these pages, I was like, why haven't I been taught this in school? Why isn't this in my health class as a girl? Why isn't this in my sex education? Why is it just about go on the pill or use a condom, create a barrier method? Like, why isn't anybody teaching me that there's actually only X amount of days that I am truly fertile? And so, you know, this was something that I just, I became in a healthy way kind of obsessed with understanding. And I decided to add cycle syncing practices to my normal routine to see if it could help me feel more consistently energized, that it could dissolve some of the negative stuff that was coming along with, you know, what was happening in my cycle in regards to a little bit of PMS, some pretty significant acne that I was dealing with, and period health overall. And this was something that I started to incorporate with the women that were coming into my practice and began to see amazing results. And it was time and time again, Jen, I never knew this. I was never told this. Like, how is this something where in a couple of months I am feeling better than I have felt in my entire menstrual years as a woman, yet nobody has explained this to me? And, we've been taught that the parts of our menstrual cycle, our period, our PMS are just like, your period is a sucky part about being a woman, but it's not true. Many of these negative symptoms that are coming in around our periods, they're clues. They're really powerful clues that something's out of whack, and that these symptoms, your pain, your discomfort, your heavy flow, your headaches, your lack of sleep, and your frustration are all ways that your body is begging you to pay attention. And so knowing more about where I am at in my cycle, it's empowered me to really pay attention and let my body lead the way into what it needs, as opposed to becoming more forceful with it, as opposed to suppressing it with ibuprofen or Advil or Aleve or the birth control pill or synthetic hormones, whatever it may be. Learning more about my own female body is one of the best exercises, to be honest, in mindfulness I've ever experienced, and sharing it with so many other women and girls has been one of the greatest gifts of paying it forward that I could ever imagine. And when I talk about changes happening quickly, I'm not kidding you. I say to women, you really need to give yourself a solid, I would say 4 to 6 months to really get rooted in this. And if you want to have a really good roadmap for your body, then a minimum of a solid 6 months of tracking and paying attention to what we're going to talk about today. But, we look at things like we have 365 days a year to be able to make change. And we do on so many levels. But when we're talking about a menstrual cycle, the average woman is having a cycle that's anywhere from 23 to 36 days long. And that can be lower and it can be higher depending on what's going on. If you look at that over a calendar year, it really means that we have on average about 10 to maybe 13 different opportunities over the course of a whole year to start to really create good positive change in our bodies. And within each one of those 10 to 13 cycles, there's different phases, there's different elements of what's going on in our body, and that's where we can really start to do some of the deeper work. So no matter where you're at in your cycle, or even in your cycle syncing experience, like there's probably many of you who are listening to me talk and being like, I don't even understand what she's talking about, 4 different phases. I've never heard any of this information before. And this could be where you have that aha moment or that mind-blowing, like, what are you saying? You're telling me that there's different times in the month that I can do different things in terms of my physical movement, the food that I'm eating, the supplements that I'm taking, the sleep that I'm getting, the energy I'm taking in or putting out, that could actually be setting me up for a healthier cycle. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. And there's no accident that you're listening to this, right? Like, this is not ironic. This is not, I was just thinking about this the other day and now it's just popped up. It's on purpose. Like there's a message within what I'm going to talk about today that is meant for you, and that this is a perfect time to start and to open yourself up to learning more. So we're going to go a little bit deeper in this. So I'm going to take you through what I want to deliver, and then I'm going to open it up for some Q&A at the end. So in this, when we are talking about why this is so vital and why it's so important, when I started to do my research on this a couple of years back in 2016, when I was really starting to write the information for the Hormone Project, there was a study that had come out. And this was like groundbreaking, this announcement. And it was by the ACOG, which is the American Committee of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And what they stated and they published was a report recommending that teenage girls, their parents, and their clinicians consider that the menstrual cycle was the 5th vital sign of health. So what that means is that by including an evaluation of the menstrual cycle as an additional vital sign, that this was helping to reinforce its importance in assessing overall health, just like we would assess things like abnormal blood pressure, heart rate, their respiratory rate. These are all key to diagnosing potentially serious health conditions. And if there was abnormal menstrual patterns and issues going on, this could also help to improve the early detection of potential health concerns that would happen not just later in their teen years, but into their adulthood as well too, as opposed to just putting them onto something suppressive like the pill that shuts down ovulation, that shuts down communication from the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Let's work with these girls and women and ask deeper questions so we can understand what's going on. Now, what's exciting about this is that the fact that this study was released, that there was a group of women's health experts that were actually suggesting that teens start to keep track of their periods, that they develop cycle awareness, that we were on this roadmap to getting early detection of things like PCOS, of thyroid disease, endometriosis, heavy bleeding, lack of periods entirely, right? Amenorrhea. That this was something that would be considered the norm for helping to assess our girls. The problem is that this was meant to change the dialogue happening in doctors' offices with their female patients, but I don't really see that it's actually happened. I mean, when was the last time your doctor asked you or your daughter about their cycle and went beyond nodding their head and recommending something like the pill, an IUD, or an Advil if they were saying they had any problems? None of these things help to regulate. We are told you don't have a period, let's put you on the pill to give you a period. You have an irregular period, let's put you on the pill to regulate your period. You don't want to get pregnant? Okay, instead of teaching you about what's actually going on in your body, pill, Mirena IUD, copper IUD, without fully understanding the impact of these different tools that women can be using. And listen, I am not against any of those things necessarily. What I'm against is the fact that it's fractionated education and that you could have a very vulnerable body and system to saying yes to any of these measures, the shot, the Depo-Provera. I mean, there's so many different things. And then you could start to have different issues happening down the road that you don't even know are connected to starting to take or put any of those things into your body. And so I, have known for a very long time, and I know lots of you have as well too, that the menstrual cycle is a signifier of our health. But I also know that it's the key to developing and nurturing our health, that it's not just about what's happening in that moment. Like I said, it's about what has led up to it and what could possibly be coming afterwards. Now, the only thing missing, outside of, I think, these conversations happening, and again, I'll speak from experience here where I am in Ontario and Canada, provincially, our doctors get about 7 to 8 minutes with their patients. Depending on what you are going in for, even when you're going in for your yearly checkup, you're getting your regular pap smear, where that screening happens every 2 to 3 years on average for a woman, unless you've had any abnormal findings. There is not a lot of time to go through everything, right? So to ask for the proper blood work you want to get done, to talk about some of the things that you've been feeling or experiencing, to talk about your menstrual cycle. That's so much to try to concentrate into a very short period of time. And doctors have the pressure put on them too, where it's like patient to patient to patient to patient. There's not a lot of time for that care. There's not a lot of time for them to not only ask you the questions, but to actually truly be present and be able to listen. And this is where we are definitely missing the mark. And this is where us as the individual, the societal citizen that is going in looking for care, I don't believe you can any longer expect your doctor to be the one to help to get you there when it comes to optimal health. I think, to be honest, in any regard, I think your doctor has become part of a tool in your toolbox. They're not the be all and end all. They're not the guru. They don't know everything. None of us know everything, and we need to understand and appreciate that. And so utilize your doctor for those annual checkups. Utilize your doctor for getting your blood work done. But then you need to have other practitioners and other tools in that toolbox that are actually going to be part of your education and the up-leveling of your health. So there's a big difference between having just like okay status quo health and having kick-ass optimal health on every level of your body. You will never find that in your doctor's office. You will not. You need to be a seeker. You need to listen to things like this. You need to read books, listen to podcasts, get out and explore. Invest in a consultation that is just about you. You need to be a seeker and put your health in front of, to be honest, everything else, because it's like the career you're striving for, the external body that you are after, the relationships, the finances, the, running your kids around, like all of the stuff that we busy ourselves with. How can you possibly show up in a state of optimal anything if you feel like crap, if you have no energy, if you feel like your body is literally breaking down physically, mentally, and emotionally, spiritually, like on every cell and soul level? You have to put yourself first. It's so interesting to me I'm a huge observer. And I obviously talk to people all the time, like, what are your barriers? Why haven't you started to create some of the changes in your health and in your body and those types of things yet? Like, tell me what's been going on. Because I get it, right? There's lots of things in my life that I probably should start to do that I haven't. Number one, it probably means I don't have it high enough on my priority ladder, my value ladder right now. Number two, I'm busy doing other things that I perceive to be more important. So, case in point, if I recommend to women, can you get to a yoga class once a week? If I send you a 30-minute video, could you do that once a week? If I give you, some meal prep tools and ideas and recipes that'll take you 30 to 60 minutes to do 1 or 2 days a week, could you do that? And they'll say, well, no, I don't have time, or it just didn't happen. Last night or the night before, I want to say, I've never watched an episode of this show, so I'm not too sure. Series finale of Game of Thrones, okay? It broke records left, right, and center. There was over 13 million people who tuned in live to watch this. That means 13 million people pressed pause on every other thing in their life, cleared their schedule, made it happen for a show, for entertainment, okay? And listen, I love shows, I love entertainment, all that. That's not my point in saying this. But how many of us choose the weekly show, whatever it is that also takes up time, that also means we have to shift things around, but we would never miss it because we love it so much. It brings us joy. It's a priority. We have to start to figure out ways that we can tether in elements of our health, whether it's more sleep, a little bit more, rest overall. Sleep and rest are not the same thing. More points of joy, self-care, better food, hydration, whatever it may be. We have to have that same type of tenacity where, like, no matter what, that is going to happen. I'm going to move my body today, no matter what, even if it's for 4 minutes. No matter what, I'm going to drink 2 liters of water today. No matter what, I'm going to eat something green. No matter what, my eyes are closed by 10 p.m. And it is applying that same level of importance and core values as we do to entertainment, obligations, afraid of what people are going to think if we don't do the thing, to our actual health and our vitality. Okay, so yeah, I feel like I went on a small little side tangent, so I'm going to pull it back in. But I want to get back to talking about this current, period methodology, that this belief that it's like normal to suffer during periods and period problems. That's not normal. They're common. This is the problem. We think because everyone we know gets breast tenderness and has cramps and is super moody, and we've grown up in a culture where we laugh at it, right? Where we're like, oh, my husband or my partner wants to move out the week coming into my period. Oh, so-and-so knows, don't talk to me when it's that time of the month. And then we pass it down to our girls, right, to our daughters, where energetically, you give it a couple of months and all the women in your home are going to be cycling at the same time. You might even notice this, like your core group of girlfriends cycling at the same time. My team is all females. We don't even see each other in person. We're virtual, pretty much all cycling around the same time. Those types of things start to happen. And unfortunately, the primary or the only treatment offered to girls and to women who are complaining about a lot of these premenstrual issues is to go on a hormone-based IUD like the Mirena, is to go on something like the birth control pill. I have seen more and more girls be put on the pill because of skin issues and acne, and then be put on things like Accutane and tetracycline, as opposed to actually helping them get to the root cause. And, if you have teens in your life right now who are dealing with very common problems like acne, like PMS, the pill is not the answer to either. So there's this thing that happened where the pill was meant for a contraceptive. I am very grateful for the 7 years that I was on the pill where I did not get pregnant, so I could finish my education and I could travel and I could do the things I wanted to do without having to worry about possibly getting pregnant. But I did not choose to go onto the pill for my skin or for, horrible periods or those types of things. And the problem now is that everything's been lumped into one. So you have skin problems, pill. You have heavy periods, pill. No period, pill. Don't want to get pregnant, pill. We're using it as a Band-Aid for everything. And it's only going to mask the issues, not solve them. And it can be super tempting to reach for these things because they're quick. and they're active. But this is setting up our girls and young women, and nothing makes me angrier when I have women in their late 30s, their 40s and 50s whose doctors still have them on synthetic hormones. Your risk of side effects and symptoms are just go through the roof at this point, and I think it is completely irresponsible that practitioners are still recommending this for women. And so it's really important to know that if you have women in your life that are suffering from things like anxiety, hair loss, depression, low sex drive, those types of things, who have gone on birth control, that can be a massive link as to why they are feeling that. What we now know, and this is like not just from the land of the woo, which a lot of people think holistic health is, but from an actual scientific database, that the birth control pill on our gut acts the same way that antibiotics do. So when we have a gut dysbiosis, we have digestive issues, we're constipated, we're not eliminating properly. This is an awesome breeding ground for acne to start to crop up as well too. Excess estrogen accumulating in our system. So many things to be thrown out of whack and out of balance. There's different things that we need to be looking at to be setting our girls up for success. And so it's like looking at what are the key nutrients and the minerals that are required for proper hormone production and balance. If left untreated and suppressed, these are only going to get worse over time. And then what ends up happening is you come off any of these synthetics, and a colleague of mine, Dr. Jolene Brighton, is like prolific in educating on this post-birth control pill syndrome. And really a lot of the things that can happen, there is definitely things we can do to help to support a body that is on different synthetic hormones. And you're going to learn this as we get deeper into your cycle syncing, but this is the awareness aspect right now. It's getting you to be more aware of why we have different things happening in the body, some of the things that are going to be supportive and those that aren't going to be supportive. You know, I think what scares me the most is that when I sit back and I look at the research and I look at the data and I take an aerial view of what's been happening in my practice, and I see this showing up, is that the most recent stats now are that 1 in 2 women will have thyroid disease. Now, this is something I will tell you, coming into the Hormone Project, some rounds, every single woman, and I take 30 women, every single one of them will have thyroid issues going on, whether it's on a cellular level, in the gland, in the pituitary, there's something that's going on in the thyroid. The other thing around this is that for every 1 male that is diagnosed with thyroid disease, there is 4 to 5 women that are diagnosed. It is so prevalent in a female body. Our menstrual cycle has a lot to do with that. Our lack of self-care and support, stress has a lot to do with that. The recent stats also show that 1 in 9 women will develop endometriosis. Now, there is a ton of research happening right now on endometriosis. In the last 6 months, there have been studies that have come out that actually indicate endometriosis is not a result of necessarily excess estrogen, that it is originally a result of having excessive bacterial toxicity in the pelvic area. That this is more like a gut and an autoimmune illness than it is necessarily a hormonal, that the hormonal issue comes as a result of the bacterial toxicity that is in this area of a woman's body. And I'll be doing a whole nother class on endometriosis with some other great guest experts as well too, but 1 in 9 women developing this. One thing that I have noticed happening simultaneously in my practice is that women who have SIBO also are ending up being diagnosed with endometriosis. So this, you know, research coming out that is saying that this is really a gut issue. This is has an autoimmune base to it. That this, I can definitely see that the parallels happening when there is major gut and digestive issues, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and endometriosis. Almost every single woman that's in my practice right now with endo also is suffering from digestive issues, SIBO, colitis. You know, they've been told they have IBS. Really what we know on this is there's multiple food sensitivities. You know, the other stat is that 1 in 10 women will be diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome, and that 1 in 20 women right now are dealing with fertility issues. This is massive. And, you know, with the talk of fertility, this is not just about women. We are seeing huge changes happen in the chemistry and the hormonal physiology of men as well too. And so fertility for so long has always been put on the woman's shoulders, that it's something that's wrong with her body. And what I'm seeing more and more with the couples that are coming into my practice, is that the male's hormones are also out of balance. So men can run a Dutch panel as well too. that their sperm quality is not very good and that their motility is not very good. So the quality is not great, the actual power and ability to get up into the cervix where it needs to go, not great, and the numbers aren't great as well too. So just as much as our female bodies are being impacted by the environment around us, so too are their bodies. And again, this is something that I do not think is being talked enough about. And women's bodies are being pumped full of hormones and synthetic drugs by means of trying to get pregnant, without necessarily looking at what's happening in his body as well too. So I think we're missing out. You know, this is a lot of different things that I've tapped on here. I'm trying to get your attention. I'm trying to get you to sit up taller. I'm trying to get you to put your phone down, to, like I said, turn those notifications off, and to understand that we're missing a huge opportunity to help not only young women, but our own bodies, our post-baby bodies, when so much happens in that fourth trimester and beyond, postpartum, and our perimenopausal, menopausal, and postmenopausal bodies. I have an entire masterclass happening next week on perimenopause and menopause. But ladies who no longer have your cycle, it is so vital for you to understand everything we're talking about today, because this is going to help you put the pieces of your health history puzzle together. To understand why you're either cruising through menopause or you are suffering through menopause, you need to go back in time and understand what was happening leading into it. So all of this that I'm talking about, that you can tell I'm so passionate and excited in talking about, and I will tell you this, I don't know everything. I'm going to share to you today what I do know. And I am constantly staying in a state of learning. I'm back in school right now doing my FDN, which is a functional diagnostic nutritionist program. And I will probably always on some level be learning and immersing in that way, because the information is always changing. Our bodies are always revealing more to us. And I just think that, you know, we are the most incredible gift that was ever created. And that because of this lack of education being offered to us, we are living to like the smallest percentile of our human potential and our ability to feel really good. This is how the Hormone Project came to be. All this information, all these different things that I was feeling in my own body. For those of you that are part of the Simplicity Project Live that I've been running with Nature's Emporium, in last week's class about hormones, I did something I've never done before, and I shared my own personal Dutch results live on the screen. I shared my first Dutch test, which was done over 2 years ago, and I shared my most recent one that was done 10 months ago. And the difference was dramatic in the two. And in the first, there was a lot of red flags. There was a lot of things happening in my body. And I went on to do this test thinking, I just want to do it out of curiosity. It was fairly new to the market. I knew it was something I wanted to start to incorporate. And I thought, I'm going to have the most kick-ass results. I did not have the most kick-ass results. I ended up seeing results in front of me that would make me quite concerned working with a female client. And I thought to myself, my God, if this is happening in my body, that for more than half my life, 3/4 of my life, I really started this journey when I was like 14 years old. And I've been doing all these things that, again, status quo, doing everything right. And my body has these red flags. What in the world is going on with other women who haven't started to do any of the things that I've been doing? And it led me on this ferocious path of really learning, of like hyper educating myself, of listening to women, of you know, yes, the testing is an important part of it, but I wanted to hear their stories. It's why I started to do more in-person events as well too. I wanted the questions to come through. I wanted women to understand that they were not the only one, and that there were solutions and strategies that we could put in place to help them feel better. And so I was recognizing this not only in myself, but client after client, conversations, health histories, one after another. These women had absolutely no idea what was going on in their body, other than the fact that they felt like crap. And they felt like they were living in a body that was not theirs. They were being dismissed by their doctors. They were suffering month after month. They were watching their girls go through the same thing and not being able to educate their daughters, but instead teaching their daughters the same form of suppression and management that they had grown up with and that they knew for themselves. And this is when I just knew that something more needed to be done. And I'm not the only person out there that is doing this type of information, but I'm the one that you're listening to today. So we're going to go into the next phase of this discussion, which is about the cycle syncing. So despite the fact that a menstrual cycle is a fact of life for women between the ages of somewhere between 12 and 50 is typically our menstruating years. Sometimes it's a bit earlier, sometimes it's a bit later in terms of when your period will start, and sometimes it's a bit earlier, and sometimes it's a bit later in terms of when your cycle is going to end. So yes, this is a normal part of our bodies, but as we've discovered, few of us truly understand the fluctuating nature of our cycles. We just kind of take it, like I said, as this fact of life, and then we leave it, right? It's like, I'm going to get my period, it's going to be awful, and then it's going to go, and then I'm back to normal. And then it'll happen again, and it's going to be awful, and then it'll go, and I'm back to normal. We never learn about how many hormonal shifts are happening during the month. And we really, I remember when I started to learn this, I felt like I had been left in the dark for so long and not understanding why some of these things were showing up. And when you can start to learn about these intricacies of your cycle, that there are, tangible, palpable things that we can start to implement where your moods improve, your energy improves, your appetite and your cravings regulate, your digestion gets better, your sleep quality goes up, even your desire and ability to want to socialize and get out there into the world, that you can start to time all of this is amazing. So I get asked this question all the time, like, can men cycle sync? No, men make most of their testosterone while they're sleeping. That's why they wake up in the morning, ready for a morning quickie, ready for intense workouts, ready for a power breakfast. They just want to go out and crush it. And then around 4 or 5 o'clock, that's when their testosterone starts to plummet and they're pretty much done for the day. Now, this is what the internal rhythm should be. This is actually why it's a 9 to 5 work cycle. Okay. It's not built for women. Not at all. This is not how our bodies thrive. The workforce was built and scheduled off of the man's 24-hour cycle, testosterone high in the morning, get out there, early morning meetings, crush it, do your job. And about 4 or 5 o'clock, this is when men's hormones are going to start to crash. This is when the workday needs to end, because we can't push the man beyond what he is able to do. Comes home, has his drink, whatever it is. And I'm painting the most stereotypical picture right now. I'm trying not to be rude about this. I'm literally just when you go do the research and the data, this is how the picture is painted. Man wakes up. Man does what he needs to do to serve himself in the morning. Man goes to work hard all day during the day. Man comes home, feet up, drink, relaxes, fed a good meal, goes to sleep. Whole process starts again the next day. It's a 24-hour cycle. Women, on the other hand, operate on a 28-day cycle. And it is no coincidence that our 28-day cycle is the exact same cycle as the lunar cycle. The moon cycle is one of, if not the most powerful cycle that exists in the world. It is part of what is controlling the 4 different seasons. So start to see the similarities here. Like nature outside that we can see when we look out the window, nature inside. 28-day lunar cycle outside, 28-day lunar cycle or, menstrual cycle inside. 4 seasons outside as things change, and each season we understand serves a purpose when we're talking fall, winter, spring, and summer. 4 phases every single cycle in our body, which also serves purposes that you're going to learn about and go through. Your follicular phase, your ovulatory phase, your luteal phase, and your menstrual phase. So, as where for men, this is this 24-hour cycle of lather, rest, rinse, and repeat. For us, because we have these 4 very distinct hormonal trends every month, each phase makes us especially good at a different kind of productivity and a different kind of energy, requirements of nourishment in that, depending on the phase that we are in. So when we're armed with this type of understanding about our body, that we literally as women, we can't wake up and go full tilt every single day of the week. We don't work well on Groundhog Day like a man does. We don't have a 24-hour cycle. We have different ebbs and flows. We have different times a month where we are going to be better at events and public speaking and work projects and being out there socially. And then we're going to have times a month where we need to hibernate. We need to pull back. We're going to have times where we want to move with more intensity in terms of exercise and times when we want to pull back. We have all of these different things that are happening emotionally, creatively, And so because no one's teaching us this, we feel like we go through mood swings all month without understanding that no, you're cyclical as a being, as a creature, as a woman, and this is a superpower. And when you can be educated and understand that you are going to feel different at different times of the month, this takes you out of victim mode, like you are having these mood swings nonstop, and instead understanding, well, I'm in this phase of my cycle, and energetically, this is just where I'm at. And when you can start to connect to that, you become in a better state of power and confidence, and you can start to utilize that for good versus feeling bad about the way that you are feeling. So some weeks you're going to feel more creative. Other weeks you're going to feel more organized. Depending on it, there's going to be weeks where you're going to want to be more intimate and have sex, and there's going to be other weeks where you're like, get away from me. Same thing with the foods that you're craving and those types of things. So when we can begin to approach our life in this way and have this understanding, it feels way less chaotic, it feels way less confusing, and it feels way less stressful. So you can start to make choices that are aligned more closely with what you need, versus just what is expected of you that's on the calendar. And so when you come out of today's class, it's a lot of info to take in. It's going to take you time. Like I said, I recommend a minimum of 6 months. And the first couple of months really is about you just paying attention. Like, what is your schedule right now? How overcommitted are you? How undercommitted are you to showing up for yourself because you're busy with everything and everyone else? Where are some of the areas that you can start to trim that calendar down and your obligations and the expectations that are on you? Where can you start to be more compassionate with yourself? When we know why we're experiencing these dramatic swings in our energy and our mood, it also gives us this opportunity to cooperate more compassionately with our body rather than fighting against ourselves. And so the quality of each menstrual phase corresponds with a certain energy of the moon. So as I'm going to explain to you all about what your 4 phases are, everyone's going to pay attention to this. And then I'm going to talk about it from a lunar phase for those of you that do not have a menstrual cycle anymore. So maybe you are postpartum, maybe you've just had a baby and you don't have your cycle back, or you're nursing, or you're menopausal, or you're postmenopausal. You're going to focus on, you need to understand what's happening in each phase. Physically and hormonally, it's very different when you aren't menstruating than it is when you are menstruating. But the other side of things, the mental, emotional, the nourishment, the exercise is all going to be the same. Now, I'm also going to talk to you about whether or not you can cycle sync if you are on the pill or on a synthetic IUD like the Mirena. The copper IUD is different because there's no hormones being produced. And so we'll touch on and talk about that. So in this, and when you get like your worksheets, you will actually have your moon syncing that's going to be towards the end, and this will be written out for you as well too. So before we get there, here is, the things that's really important to understand is, like I said in the beginning, we all have our own biological blueprint. So just because we're all women doesn't mean that we all have the exact same cycles. Everybody's rhythm is going to be slightly different. It's also understanding the types of bleeds that our body have. And this is something I go into a lot deeper in the hormone project, is even paying attention to the color of your menstrual cycle, the heaviness of it. Is there any clots or chunks that you see that you're passing through? The duration of your cycle, does it start off brown or spotting for a day or two before you go into a full bleed? That's not actually considered your period yet. That's like premenstrual spotting, those types of things. So there's a whole class inside the Hormone Project where we go much deeper into that. Right now, what I would say to you is take that on as part of your awareness. As you're tracking your cycle, tracking is not just about plugging in the day your period starts and the day your period ends. Tracking is about, how are you feeling? What is your mood? What are your symptoms? Do you have backache, breast tenderness, acne, headache? Are you feeling moody? Those types of things. And then have you been intimate at this time? What's your cervical mucus and fluid like? There's, very distinctive things that you're trying to pay attention to help you understand your own blueprint. So this is like, tracking is really your research and development. We understand this for anything else we're doing. A project at school, a project at work, when we're trying to, build the next level of something. If you're in a work position, you're trying to get to the next promotion, you have to go through a phase of research and development and grooming to work your way up. It is the same thing in your health and in your body. This is your introduction. Now you're going to have to continue to do your own homework and research and education and development to get you to that place that you're trying to move towards, which is being able to sync up your cycles internally, externally, based on the way that you want to feel. So we have 5 main hormones that are involved in our cycles themselves. So these are estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, FSH and LH, which is your follicular stimulating hormone, and your luteinizing hormone. Their quantities change 4 times throughout your cycle, which is what makes up the 4 very distinct phases. So this is why if you are on something like the birth control pill, you don't have these different phases because your pill is releasing the exact same amount of synthetic estrogen, progestin, not progesterone, every single day. So because all 4 phases are being shut down, you do not ovulate at all when you're on the pill, which means that you are not producing your own progesterone when you are on the pill either, because you can't produce progesterone without ovulating. It doesn't mean that you can't sync up like those who are not on the pill. In fact, I recommend this when women are on the pill because it's going to help to prime your system for when you do come off the pill. It's going to help your overall gut health. It'll help support deficiencies the pill's creating, like your B vitamins, magnesium, copper, zinc, and selenium. Because when you're following a cycle syncing guide, you're going to start to eat more varied foods. We're going to help to get you more aware of how your body should be feeling so that when you do come off the pill, hopefully you have an easier transition, getting yourself back into a good rhythm and cycle. So number 1, when you are starting to do this, understand first that when you bleed on the pill, that is not a period. That is a chemical withdrawal bleed. And so you know how you can stay on your pill if you have like a holiday coming up or a big event and you're like, oh, I don't want to have my period, then I won't take my sugar pills, or I won't stop taking the pill. I'll just keep taking it and that'll prolong when I get my period. You know how you have the ability to do that on the pill? The reason being is that bleed is not a period that's coming at regular intervals. The only reason you're getting a bleed every month is because you take your 21 days of the synthetic hormone pill, and then you take sugar pills for 7 days or no pill. And in those 7 days, what happens is your body goes through a chemical withdrawal. And the chemical withdrawal, when you have the drop of the synthetic estrogen and progestin and testosterone coming into your body, signals for the lining to start to shed. So it is not a natural period that your body has produced by going through the normal processes that we would. In fact, you remember, you haven't ovulated. You didn't produce progesterone to be getting this menstrual cycle. And so how you would actually do the cycle syncing if you're on the pill is the first thing is when you finish the last day of your pill bleed, the next day counts as day 1 or your follicular phase. And you're going to learn about all the phases in a moment when we go through. So day 1 is the first day of your follicular phase, and then you'll follow those guidelines for 7 days in that follicular phase. Then the next 4 days, we're going to put you on an ovulatory phase when your body would normally be ovulating based on a 28-day cycle. And then once that 4-day period is done, we transition you into when your body would naturally, without the pill, go into a luteal phase, which for an average woman is anywhere from 10 to 14 days. So when we're syncing with the pill, we would do about 12 days of this phase. And then the menstrual phase, we would do like as your pill bleed for 5 days, and then you would begin the process again. So in your worksheets, we will include this for you. And for those of you listening as a podcast, we'll have info for this linked up in your show notes. So I'm going to take a quick sip of water because this is a lot of talking. And then we are going to get going. How are we doing so far for those of you that are tuning in live? Exciting, fascinating, making sense, connecting. Do you not, like, for me, I am just always, my layman's way of looking at this is so frigging cool. And when we can start to understand this becomes our tool of power in our own bodies. And, for a lot of women, they'll say, oh, it's a lot of information to take in. And it's like, yeah, because you've been probably menstruating for decades and never knew any of this was happening behind the scenes in your body. So remember, you don't have to understand it all today. In fact, just showing up and listening, what this is doing is it's actually already starting change to cultivate behind the scenes. We think that in order to change, we have to do everything all at once. But what I'm telling you is simply just showing up, opening up your mindset, paying attention, and listening is your beginning. Like, you're already starting to do the work. So let's go into the 4 phases of a female cycle. So the follicular phase is really that first phase. Some people will teach this thing that the menstrual cycle is the first phase, but you can't get a menstrual cycle without the other 3 phases happening first. So I teach it as the menstrual cycle being the final phase, and the first phase being the follicular phase. So this, again, on average, 7 to 10 days long, depends on the woman and on her body where she's starting. So physically and hormonally, what's happening here is this is when this is beginning after menstruation. And it's known as the follicular phase because your pituitary gland in your brain is releasing a hormone called FSH, which is your follicular stimulating hormone. So what this does is this is actually what is stimulating the follicles in one of your ovaries to mature. This is where your eggs are. So once this is happening and you are starting to produce the follicular stimulating hormone, your body then starts to release your luteinizing hormone. And this is what's actually responsible for ovulating. So what that means is those follicles will ripen and become mature. And this is when one of those eggs will start to be ready to be like the chosen one that will eventually be released during your ovulation. What you might notice physically is that your cervical fluid takes on a bit of a wetter consistency, and sometimes it can look a bit creamy. So it's really important to pay attention to what is showing up in your underwear. And this, I think, is a powerful one to explain to your daughters, because they might think something weird is going on, or that they might be ashamed of it or scared of what they're seeing. We need to do more than just telling our girls, like, here's a little pad or a tampon to put into your backpack in case you get your period. They need to understand this is what you might start to feel in your body. You might notice some cervical changes. Your boobs might get sore. You're going to notice some hair that's growing. These are all signs of puberty. Your hips are going to start to broaden. This means your body's producing estrogen. You as a mom can decide how far you want to go. But I know, well, my poor daughter, she is like, la, 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 I know too much. I know too much that's going on. But for me, I want her to understand. And I want the girls, that are part of my programs to understand that your body is amazing and beautiful and powerful, and there's nothing to be ashamed of or be afraid of. And if there is something that feels like it's out of balance, this is how we pay attention, understand before it becomes a big issue. Not by sweeping down the door, not by telling them, this is private. You don't talk to anybody about it. Can we please stop? This is why so many of them are suffering in silence and having issues that are going on from a very young age and then being led down the path of suppression. It's because they've been suppressed the whole time. So we need to up our education, mamas, and we need to do a better job at teaching our girls about what their body is going to be doing. So from an energetic and creative perspective, this is when your estrogen and testosterone levels, they remain lower in the beginning of this phase and then gradually start to increase as ovulation gets closer. What this means is on this energy level is that your energy is up, your brain and your mood cognition as well too. So you typically start to feel a bit more confident, more powerful. This is often a time of the month for women when you're willing to take more risks. Your libido is increasing as well too. Your skin, oftentimes, this can be the best time of the month, which is when the menstrual cycle has ended, leading into ovulation. As well, I think on an energetic level, and I know this for myself, this is when I definitely feel more extroverted. This is when I'll want to get out and do more events, do more Facebook Lives, do those types of things. And so this is for those of you who are like high-level creatives. You love brainstorming and teamwork and networking. This is a great period of time to be doing that, is when you're in that follicular phase. At this period of time as well too, estrogen actually, it suppresses our appetite often, which can make you feel a little bit lighter and less weighed down, like you're bloated and holding on to water retention. So typically, if you ask most women, the week they feel the best in the month is the one coming off of their menstrual cycle. Now, how can you better support this phase in terms of like the food that you're eating and what you're choosing? So we're always looking at how are we optimizing digestion, and then how is the digestion optimizing our hormones. So it's important to understand that since your estrogen levels are at their lowest at this time, this is when you can consume slightly more estrogenic foods. This is where things like ground flaxseed are excellent to do, raw pumpkin, some non-GMO water wash fermented organic soy, some tempeh, those types of things, which are more phytoestrogenic in our bodies. This would be a better time of the month to be doing that. In fact, when we get into seed cycling, which we'll talk about, the first 2 weeks, once from the first day of your menstrual cycle until around ovulation, or days 1 through 14, adding 1 to 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed or raw pumpkin every day is an excellent way to help to support our hormones in terms of estrogen and FSH. It's also wonderful for increasing our fiber and bulking up our stools so that we are supporting proper pooping and elimination. Now, I would recommend that when you're increasing things like your fiber for elimination and you're increasing your veggies, try not to be doing like raw veggies and hummus all the time. That's what's going to make you gassy and bloated. So roast them, steam them, put them into smoothies, add them into different, things that you're cooking and creating. In terms of your exercise, this is when you'll probably feel more energetic to do more challenging and stimulating things. High intensity interval training, spin classes, CrossFit, that type of stuff. And that definitely changes throughout the month. Now, in the second phase, which is your ovulatory phase. So ovulatory phase is about anywhere from 2 to 4 days long, depending on, again, the woman and her cycles. It's the shortest of all of the 4 phases. And yet growing up as girls, you are taught you're going to get a period and then you can get pregnant. And you can get pregnant any day of the month. So just never get pregnant. Use whatever you have to do. And you put like the fear of God into all women, which, yes, we want to understand that we can get pregnant, and we don't want our young girls getting pregnant, or women that, we're trying to build their career or don't want to conceive. But we're shortchanging them by not teaching them how this actually works, and that there's really only about 2 to 4 days in our physical body where we can get pregnant. Some will say in the upwards of 6 because of how long sperm can live in our bodies. But this is an important thing for all girls and women to understand. Your ovulation is really like the result of all the hard work that your body has been doing in the past few weeks leading up to this. So right before you ovulate, there is this surge of your luteinizing hormone, and that causes the dominant follicle to literally burst open and release an egg into your fallopian tube. Okay, so that's ovulation when that has happened. Now, the egg itself can only survive for about 12 to 24 hours, in which case either it'll be fertilized or it'll die off. At this point, your cervix, so this is where you might feel some other physical changes. It becomes soft. It actually moves up a bit higher and opens. And it moves up higher to help. This is how freaking cool your body is, women. The reason your cervix softens and moves up higher is it helps your egg to actually call in and attract the best quality sperm. So the sperm that has the strongest swimmer and the strongest ability to actually find where that egg is and get up there and get to the egg to actually fertilize, which to me is just like so fascinating. And that this is happening in our body without us even literally having to tell it what to do. It is what we are designed for. Now, the cervical fluid is going to change in response to this. And this is where you'll hear people describe it more like that egg white fluid. There's lots of elasticity. So if you were to actually touch that fluid, it would kind of, have some hang time in between your fingers. And if you actually look through the microscope, a colleague of mine, when I was doing one of her master classes, was showing this, that if you actually look under a microscope, this fluid, when it's that egg white consistency, literally contains like channels that help sperm swim up through the cervix. I mean, I would like, that was a mind-blowing thing for me to see and to understand how that works. Now, what you might also feel with some of these changes happening is around ovulation, it is very common for women to have pelvic pain or certain twinges that they feel on the side where the ovary is actually, where that follicle is bursting and that egg is being released. Sometimes you can also get headaches, bloating, different cravings, sometimes mood swings as well too. This period of time is when in our brain, the communication centers in your brain are really at their sharpest. So this time can be used to our advantage as women. This is where, again, like presenting, writing, communicating, getting something out there. This is also where like we are attracting a mate at this time. Like our body knows, even if you don't want to have a child, those physical and hormonal signals from the inside is saying like, this is when you're going to feel more amorous. This is when you'll probably want to dress, a little bit more feminine, put your earrings on, like do your hair, those types of things, because your body is like, I want to attract a mate in. This is when I want to be my most sexual. This is when, libido is going to be up. Your pheromones change at this time of month. So your actual scent is what's attracting different mates. And you might even notice that you and your partner or your spouse have different scents at different times of the month. And that is definitely hormonally related as well too. And it is that whole thing of being able to pull someone into that sphere so our body can create what it's looking for. When you're thinking about the food for this time of month, this is when you want to go easy on the carbohydrates. And it's a struggle because this is oftentimes when your body will want more of the carbs. But the problem is that if you're going to include more flour-based products or things like, rice and crackers, bagels, sandwiches, cookies, whatever the carby things are you're going for, you might notice you have an increase in the bloating. Instead, try to focus more on getting more of your vegetables in around this time. Keep your protein choices really good and healthy sources of fat. This can help to reduce some of the symptoms that can come on when we have that increase in estrogen, like constipation, the bloating, the moodiness, the breast tenderness, sometimes acne. So your dark leafy greens, your cruciferous, lightly steamed smoothies, roasted, those types of things are really going to help. And again, when we're taking in more vegetables, it's not only helping us to do that elimination, but it's helping us support elimination through pooping and by getting more fibrous foods in to keep the bowels flowing, which we eliminate our estrogen through those different pathways. And then ultimately that phase 3 detoxification is out through our poop. So it's really important that you're not constipated and that you are pooping well. And if you're choosing during ovulation and on your cycle or leading into your cycle to have more sweets, more alcohol, more coffee, chocolate, those types of things, you got to be really careful because all of that excess is going to bung you up, which means that you're not going to be properly eliminating the estrogens out of your system, and they're going to recirculate and become quite potent in your body, which is going to send your symptoms through the roof. Exercise around this time, typically you'll still be in that same zone that you were in phase 1, which is where you can still do some of the intense types things. I really love at this time to be doing more of a yoga-based approach and doing a vinyasa and a flow. I just find that when I'm trying to tap into different rhythms in my body, meeting myself on that yoga mat is the quickest way I'm able to get back into my system, or walking outside in nature. Third phase is your luteal phase. This is the longest phase of our cycle after ovulation leading into your menstrual cycle. Typically anywhere from 10 to 14 days. Again, it's going to be different for every woman. And during this phase, this is when the lining of the uterus is actually starting to thicken. And it's thickening because it believes that it is doing this to implant an egg, that we have potentially just fertilized an egg here, and we need to be able to embed that egg into the lining of the uterus for an amniotic sac and life to start to create. After ovulation, when your FSH and LH have started to decline, they'll remain low for the rest of the cycle. Now, estrogen and or testosterone, they're also going to start to decline as well too. And progesterone is going to start to rise gradually. Now, progesterone is a heat-inducing hormone, so it can raise your basal temperature for the remainder of your luteal phase. I find sometimes my women who are having, strong surges of this, that this can impact their sleep. I also find that if they did not ovulate, or their progesterone production is low, or it's low in relationship to how much estrogen that they are producing, that this is where you can start to find things like the headaches coming on, lots of bloating. The premenstrual symptoms are a whole heck of a lot worse. And so I will work with them on trying to balance out their progesterone and their estrogen. But in terms of what they're choosing to do in their space, this is a really good time to try to work on decreasing what's happening in your calendar, to get more organized, like in your home, in your space, just life in general. Really reevaluate what you've been saying yes to, and to try to take some of the load off of your system. This is also when, in this second half, your sleep might start to be disrupted. So you want to prioritize it. Getting off your devices earlier at night, making sure that your room is, completely blacked out. Wear blue light blockers if you can at night. Use essential oils before you go to bed. Sleep in as cool of environment as possible, in as little clothing as possible, and prioritize getting a minimum of 7 hours of sleep or rest every single night. And I say or rest because I know for a lot of women, actually getting full sleep is not happening right now. And so can you be lying down? Like, can you be horizontal? Can you not be up and doing everything around the house? And I just said to my husband last night, actually, it was like 9 o'clock and we try to get into bed by 9:30, sleep by 10. And I said, like, laundry on the bed to do, and I was finishing up notes for this. I'm like, what can we continue to do to make this be less, where there feels like there's less that has to get done, less to accomplish? And, he was like, I don't know. I'm like, not an answer. That's not an answer. What can we do? And so, we didn't answer the question last night. We're just putting it out there and percolating, and we're always reevaluating in our life. How can we do less so that we can live more, that we can have the ability to choose, sleep as a priority, joy and intimacy and all of those different things. Because you can't jam it all in, right? You can't have the house that looks perfect and have the great sleep and have the perfectly made lunches and, nail your exercise and have a great sex life and do all of those things. You burn the heck out. So it's constantly asking yourself, how can I do less? And then get to a place where that feels good for a while. And then when you start to feel those like anxiousness feelings come up again, ask the same question, how can I do less? Right? It's like that I'm ever evolving in that. This period of time energetically, this is when you want to, like I said, slow things on down, clean things up, start to kind of incubate. This is when I find is a good time to try to change up what you're doing exercise-wise. Maybe if you're showing up to something like high intensity interval training or boot camps or CrossFit, could you still do strength training, but maybe not to quite the intensity? Maybe it's lighter weight, higher repetitions. Maybe you're doing something, like Pilates. Yoga, I think, is fantastic at any time of the month, but specifically at this time. And can you connect with nature, right? Like I said, walking and getting outside. Nutritionally, this period of time is where we want to focus on the foods that are rich in your B vitamins, your magnesium, your fiber. We want to be supporting what the body is going to be leaching. And coming into our cycle, our B vitamins, our nervous system are just depleting this all the time. Our minerals like calcium and magnesium, are also, I find as well too, this is when women are more likely to have electrolyte imbalances. So adding some pink Himalayan sea salt into your water and getting the fiber in, because leading into your cycle and when we're having that menstrual cycle, again, we want to make sure we are eliminating fully and completely. So supplementation is super important. I talk about my foundational 5 all the time, and I have a chapter on my website, jenpike.com, talking about this. But there are some additional things that we can do, leading into this. I find for most women, they're going to need a really good quality B complex. I love AOR and Designs for Health every day of the month to be supporting their system. Iron is another one as well too. So, a liquid iron source is best to help to get into your system and to pay attention to your digestion and again, your elimination. The final phase is the menstrual phase. Now, this is anywhere from 3 to 7 days long. This is, marked by the arrival of your period. So day 1 of your cycle is the first day of bleeding. So as your progesterone levels plunge, that's what causes the breakdown and the shedding of the uterine lining. So if you've had a particularly stressful month, the month or months leading into a shorter cycle. I have had this happen before, where my cycle is typically, I average now about a 26-day cycle. And I've had months, though, where it's been 23 days. I had one month when it was 21 days. The month when it was 21 days is when we were in Paris last year. Didn't sleep all night on the flight over. Time change, like it was stress. So what happens when you're under stress? Massive surge of cortisol, massive drop in progesterone. That drop in progesterone under times of stress will signal for that cycle to start, which is why it came on early. Now, if you're chronically stressed, you probably are chronically low in progesterone. and maybe elevated in some of the other hormones, or you're low overall. So you're going to have breakthrough bleeding, you're going to have an inconsistent irregular period, or you're going to have a very short cycle where you feel like you have your period every couple of weeks. Even though you might have a normal rhythm for your body, we want to work to prolongate this and get to a healthier state. At this point, for your cervix is more firm and it's low and it's slightly open. And the reason that it's slightly open is this is to actually allow the menstrual blood to pass through. This is where, you know, backaches and achy hip joints, breast tenderness, fatigue, and cravings. So when you're actually having your period, a lot of the reason you get the achiness in your hips and your back is because your uterus is actually contracting to shed that lining of itself off. And so it's those first couple of days where you've got the achiness. So that's where, you know, a heating blanket, castor oil packs, you know, yoga tune-up balls, booking an appointment for your chiropractor or your osteopath or some massage around that time. Really nice, some gentle yoga postures as well too, just to be supporting. This is energetically, I think, one of the most, when you can get to a place where you're not suffering on your period and you know, maybe that first day or two just feel a little like you need to ground down. This is a great time to be journaling, to help assess, to make better, more clear decisions, to really tune in, ladies, to your gut messages. This is where you can get a lot of energetic downloads as to what is going on in your body. And it's okay to want to be a bit more quiet and withdrawn for those first few days. Not okay if you want to literally kill people that you live with and you're venomous to others around you. That is definitely a sign that something is out of balance. But this is an introspective period of time. If you've never read The Red Tent, you most definitely should. And it really talks about how, you know, the red tent is where women went to menstruate. And this is where they, you know, this is where the collective happened. This is where they culminated. This is where they supported and took care of one another. It's where they talked and they really, you know, they really cultivated this bond and where it was okay for this to happen. And nowadays on our periods, we're suffering silence, or we're, you know, bitching about it. And we're not doing anything constructive because we're not taught how to. Pen to paper. Get out for a walk, you know, talk to that girlfriend that you can talk to about anything, and allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Nutritionally, you need more hydration during this period of time. Bone broth, water, teas, elixirs, smoothies, soups, things that are water rich, which are going to help with your water retention. They're going to help with that bloating and feeling like you're putting weight on during your period. Again, think about foods that are high in iron and zinc. So this is where, you know, your greens are really good, berries, beets, those types of things I find to work really beautifully. And then in terms of exercise, this is where you put no pressure on yourself. These are your walks. These are your restorative yoga days. This is like legs up the wall, deep breathing, meditation, really allowing your body to just feel and be where it's at. So how about if you do not have a cycle, okay? What can you start to do? So I'm going to talk to you about the lunar cycle, and then I'll talk to you about the seed cycling, and then we're almost actually done. So phase one of when you're in that lunar cycle, this is when we are looking at the full moon as being, or the waxing moon rather, is that follicular phase. So on your calendar, most calendars will tell you when the waxing moon is, the full moon, the new moon, and the waning moon. And then you can match up what you're learning here to that. Now you can also Google and download. I actually have a calendar a girlfriend bought me, which is a moon cycle calendar for the entire year for 2019, and it lays it all out. And so in that waxing moon, this is when you would take the action you planned out based on your follicular phase that you learned about above. And then coming into the full moon is your ovulatory phase. Now, what's important to know is that some women menstruate with the full moon, which is known as red bleeds, okay? Now, I was a red bleeder for years. Most of the women who bleed red are typically known as healers, medicinal women, or the women that take care of everyone else. I've devoted majority of my life to helping support and take care of other women and other people, which made a lot of sense that I was a full moon, red moon bleeder. It's why this exists. It's why the Hormone Project exists. It's why I have a business. But what's been interesting is that over the last few months, I've been doing a lot of internal energy work. I've been working with an energy coach. My cycle has now become a white moon cycle, which is new moon. And this is really because I am actually creating better boundaries and doing less of taking care of everyone else and starting to put my own energetic needs first. Still supporting, but with healthier and better boundaries. And so the new moon is known as the menstrual phase most typically. And then the waning moon is that luteal phase. So you again would look at in your worksheets that'll be coming. Give us a week to get these worksheets, if not a little bit longer, put together, but maybe pause and listen back to this, and that the waxing moon is your follicular phase, the full moon, the ovulatory phase, the new moon, the menstrual phase, and the waning moon is the luteal phase. Now, if you had it happen the opposite, where the menstrual phase was the full moon, you would just move everything collectively to come in alignment with that. Now, how can you start to get your cycle in sync with the moon? Because you might be listening to that and going, I don't fall into either of those categories. I don't even know when I cycle. So step one is you have to track. Step two, these are the two best ways to start to sync your cycle up with the moon. Number one is understand when the moon cycles are happening and spend time in nature. So if your cycle is fluctuating in length hugely from period to period, it might also be the result of your environment. So it could be because you're not getting enough good sleep. It could be because you have a bright, noisy, space where you're sleeping. It could be because of Wi-Fi. It could be because you're not disconnecting from what's causing you stress. So getting out into nature, getting out for a walk, a bike ride, even just sitting outside, those types of things are going to help. And there's more and more research out there that, proves this, that we need to be in nature more often in order to help support our overall health, our mental health, and our hormonal health. So getting outside as much as you can is really important. The second thing I will tell you makes the biggest difference is improving your relationship to light and dark. Part of how our cycles sync up to the moon, it's through our exposure to light and dark. And as it changes throughout the lunar month, right? So at the new moon, we're supposed to be sleeping in darkness. And at the full moon, the night sky should be lit up with moonlight. But most of us are living in towns and cities that give out lots of light pollution all throughout the hours. So you have night lights in your house for the kids, or it's like the neighbor's light that's shining into your room. And so understanding that, cortisol, your main stress hormone, in your body, cortisol is the sun. When the sun comes up, cortisol goes up. And that's to give us our energy and our mojo and our light that flame underneath us to get us going through the day. When the sun goes down, this is when we want cortisol to drop down. And as the moon comes up, this is when we want melatonin to come up. So cortisol, like the sun, when you get up and see a beautiful sunny day, it gives you an extra pep in your step. It gives you that energy. You want to get out there and, show up in a different way. You're happier. This is what healthy cortisol levels do for our body. But as the day starts to wind down, as we start to see the sun set, that cortisol, that main stress hormone, it needs to set as well so we can become more grounded, and that our bodies can do the internal work to be supporting melatonin production, which is going to help support best rest. It's going to get out of us our sympathetic, more stress-based nervous system response into our parasympathetic. This is where we rest and digest, not just food, but like your life. Everything you felt and experienced throughout the day, and it happens when we sleep. So if you're not sleeping, if you're not outside, if you have no connection to the sun, the moon, the wake, sleep, light, and dark cycles, you're going to feel totally out of whack. And in my book, The Simplicity Project, I have a whole sleep checklist of things that you can start to implement. And truthfully, ladies, the best period of time to be sleeping, we want to be in bed by no later than 10 to 10:30 p.m. lights out, and then really waking with that natural light in the morning. And then the other thing I would say is you've got to fix your menstrual problems. So if you have big period problems, this is where the cycle syncing and starting to map out and track your cycle are going to be huge for you. Now, when I was in the beginning phases, and I still actually do this now, of trying to get my cycle on track and look at what was happening in the phases and start to implement the moon cycle, there's different hierarchies of options. So level one is track your cycle. Start to learn and understand what your 4 cycles are, how you're feeling during them, and lay that down. That's going to take you months to do. So start there. The second phase is begin to do seed cycling. Now, seed cycling is, I find, to be an easy, fantastic way to support your menstrual cycle throughout the month. The first phase, which is, between the first day that you menstruate and halfway through your cycle, 1 to 2 tablespoons of raw pumpkin seed or flaxseed daily. Put it into smoothies, coconut yogurt, however you like. And then in the second half of your cycle, you do a simple switch over to either raw sunflower seed, sesame, or you could do some evening primrose oil. Same amount, 1 to 2 tablespoons or 1 to 2 capsules of evening primrose oil. Now, if you're going through menopause and if you have amenorrhea, I still recommend that you follow the seed cycling. Now, if you don't have a cycle, if you're like, Jen, I don't have a day 1 of a bleed because I don't have a bleed, then you would follow the first half of what that lunar cycle is. So from the new moon until halfway through the month, and then right to that waning moon, and then from the waning moon until the full moon. So that first chunk of the month of that new moon until halfway through would be your flax and your pumpkin. And then the second half from the waning moon until that full moon comes through again would be when you would do the sunflower and the sesame. And so when I was first starting to do this, I went ahead and I wrote it out for 6 months on my calendar. So I didn't have to think about it. I literally was like pumpkin and flax, arrows through for 14 days. And then sunflower and sesame, arrows through for 14 days. And I did it on every single calendar. It took me about 30 minutes to sit down and see where the moon was happening and what was going on and do it that way. And I keep all my seeds and my nuts and that in the fridge. I literally keep a tablespoon measurement inside the glass mason jar with it. So it is like I keep things as simple and automated as possible to make this easiest for our bodies. So we've got about 5 minutes left here. I'm going to finish off with my 7 steps of simplicity to help to create healthier, happier cycles. Everything you've been learning today is leading into next week's masterclass of perimenopause and menopause, because again, you can't fully understand and appreciate where your body is at in those 2 transitional phases. Perimenopause is puberty in reverse, okay? So we needed to have today's discussion to understand what was starting in your body, what's been going on, what was happening in the phases of your cycle to get you to a place of now fully appreciating why your perimenopause and transition to menopause is feeling the way it feels. And this is another extremely powerful time in our life that is not meant for us to lose our memory, feel awful, suffer from insomnia, vaginal dryness, no sex drive, and weight gain. It doesn't have to be that way. So get excited for next Tuesday. So let's finish off with these simplicity and 7 steps to healthier, happier cycles. Step 1, hydrate your body. I can't stress this enough. If you are dehydrated, you are holding on to much of what needs to be released in your system. Optimize your digestion and your elimination pathways. So hydration is 1. Optimize your digestion is number 2. Number 3 is, are you pooping? If you're not pooping, this is really where everything begins. What's going to help you poop? Increasing your hydration. What else is going to help you poop? Optimizing your digestion. After elimination, we focus on, and really we focus on this throughout, stabilize your blood sugar. If you are hungry all the time, if your cravings are out of control, your mood is all over the place, you have to work on balancing your blood sugar, protein, fat, and fiber at every meal. Number 5 is move your body. Notice I've said move your body. I didn't say exercise because they're not synonymous. Moving your body is like get up from your desk, move your system, park farther away, take the dog you have for an actual walk, flip yourself upside down into downward dog. Move your body. Meet yourself where you're at and start from there. Number 6 is cultivate more joy. Put daily rituals of self-care into practice for yourself, whether it is, wearing a beautiful essential oil that makes you happy, keeping a 5-minute gratitude journal, waking up 10 minutes earlier than the rest of the house and enjoying a warm tea quiet by yourself, journaling. It doesn't matter what it is, what makes you happy. And the 7th is sleep. We really can't heal if we're not getting rest. It is impossible. Now, what are some of the biggest issues that will interfere with what I just talked about? Number one, skipping meals or eating too few calories. This is going to rock your blood sugar world and make you feel off, and it will impact your weight in a negative way. Consuming inflammatory foods like lots of sugar, gluten, dairy, a lot of coffee, alcohol. Alcohol, ladies, is massive in terms of excess estrogen, and it is something that you need to be decreasing. Late night eating before you go to bed, which is going to lead to a crappy sleep, excessive stress, and not paying attention to what is stressing you out and how you're feeling and what is going on and what you have a choice to change. We don't necessarily have the ability to change everything right now. And there are a lot of things that bring us stress that don't just involve us, but there are many things that are stress in your life that we can choose to shift right now or change our response to it. Poor liver function and elimination. Okay, so supporting these areas of your body. Again, this is stuff I get much deeper into within protocols of the Hormone Project. Poor thyroid health. Getting appropriate blood testing done every single year and getting full thyroid panels done. I'm telling you, like I said, the stats are 1 in 2 women now being diagnosed with thyroid disease, and I'm running programs sometimes where every single woman, and I will tell you more than half of them don't even know they're dealing with it until we request the full thyroid panel, which we oftentimes have to fight for. And when we look at it and say, look, you have this going on or this going on, or your antibodies are elevated, and this is actually Hashimoto's, and then getting them the proper care they need. The other thing is travel and shift work. So these are some of the things that you have to really think about when you're creating your own 7 steps of simplicity towards this. What are some of the things that need to shift? And you can only start with one area. So in your next steps, maybe you have to listen to this again with pen to paper. You need to keep learning. You need to start by tracking your cycle, your feelings, the lunar cycle. Pay attention, ladies. Pay attention. Stop waiting for someone else to do this for you. You have to do this for you. You need to empower your daughters and the girls you are living with and the women you are working with to do the same thing. Give yourself time and be compassionate and patient. Remember, I said a minimum of 6 solid months to start to really integrate this into your life. So 10:30 on the dot. Fantastic. That is amazing. You guys have been amazing at listening to all of this. And, I know that, like I said, this can feel like a lot of information, but the education is going to keep on coming. For those of you that are posting on the sidebar and asking, the Hormone Project, the next round starts up June 17th. We had over 300 women on the wait list, and all the applications are rolling in. So I personally review all of the applications. And then I go through and I will reach out to those who I feel like are a good fit. I'm totally honest with people. It is not something where we just like take everyone and anyone. I don't run this program for that. Yes, it's part of my business and it's a revenue stream, but I want to work with women who are ready. And if you're not ready, if you're not at that stage where you are A, fed up, and B, you want to do the work and really create that change, for some people, they just are like, I need to learn more. Like, I don't drink water yet. I need to start by drinking water, right? Or I go to bed at midnight. I need to start to get myself to bed at like 11 o'clock instead. The Simplicity Project is that path. Working with our on-team naturopath or our other holistic nutritionist would be the way to go. The Hormone Project is for the woman who is like, I'm so frigging fed up. I have been to practitioners, doctors, like I am ready. I want to dedicate a couple of months to really starting on the path of feeling good about my body and feeling the difference and making the changes. That is who the Hormone Project is for. And there's 4 distinctive protocols we go through that are supporting the liver and your elimination, your digestive health, your adrenals, and your thyroid. Everything is laid out for you. There's 9 different meal plans to choose from. There's tons of options, whether you're plant-based, you have SIBO, leaky gut, or like I'm an omnivore, I consume animal products. Tons of recipes, entire workout series as well too. That's everything from yoga and walking, different guided meditations and podcast, strength training, Pilates. I mean, this is the program. This is the work. It's that next level. So you can go, you want to read more about it, you can totally do so at jenpike.com/the Hormone Project. Submit your applications. Like I said, next round starts June 17th. For those of you that are tuning in from our online groups, this recording will be reposted for you in the Facebook group within a couple of days. Our worksheets that we're talking about for this masterclass, give us about a week to work our back end and get those up and going. And to all my podcasters listening in through the Simplicity Sessions podcast, thank you so much. All of you, feel free to share this with as many women in your life. The reason that I do this is to spread the education. And when you tune in, you become an ambassador of simplicity for women. You become an ambassador of hormonal health and education for them. And you need to up-level your participation by sharing and spreading the info, because you never know how much that can impact and change another woman's life for either her or for her girls. So you have my full-on permission to do so. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And as always, I am wishing you all more simplicity and more ease in all that you do. Have a fantastic rest of your day, everyone.